All right, so you're thinking about a career in pharmacology. Maybe you're picturing yourself in a lab coat, mixing things in beakers.
It's a little more complicated than that, but also much more fascinating.
Yeah, that's true. So we're doing a deep dive with RoleCatcher's Pharmacology Career Guide. Should be pretty interesting.
Definitely. Pharmacology is about more than just knowing different medications. It's about the journey from the lab to potentially changing people's lives.
So it's kind of like being a detective, but instead of a crime scene, you're looking at the human body.
Exactly. You need that same curiosity, and you need to really understand multiple scientific disciplines. Memorizing drug names isn't going to cut it. You need to know about chemical composition and how drugs interact with all the body systems, and even the math that predicts all those effects.
So it takes a lot more than a biology degree then.
Biology is the foundation, yeah. But pharmacology needs chemistry, physiology, even math to really understand how drugs work.
Okay, so like how would you explain how those all work together?
Okay, well, chemistry helps you look at the structure and the behavior of a drug.
Okay, so like caffeine.
Sure, caffeine. So then physiology comes in and shows how that caffeine molecule connects to receptors in your brain, and then boom, you get that energy boost.
Interesting.
And then math helps us make a model of all of that so we can predict how different doses will affect different people.
Wow, it's amazing how all that comes together. It's complex, but it also seems really rewarding. And RoleCatcher mentions that there's potential for really good pay.
And even beyond the pay, imagine how good it would feel to know that your research helped to make a life-saving drug, or just help someone have a better life.
For sure, who wouldn't want to be a part of that? But it can't all be good, right? Like RoleCatcher mentions long hours, especially in research.
Yeah, research is definitely demanding.
Yeah.
Constantly running experiments, figuring out why you're getting weird results, and analyzing data. You have to have a really good eye for detail.
And you'd have to be able to handle the pressure. And what about the education? You'd probably need a doctorate,
A
right?
lot of time and effort, yeah.
Hmm.
But if you're really passionate about this kind of work, it's worth it. And the career paths you can take are really diverse. You could work in a lab, you could lead research teams, you could even work in policy.
Okay, so tell me more about that. RoleCatcher talks about those different career stages and what it looks like to be an entry-level pharmacologist. What would someone in that position actually be doing day to day?
Well, you'd probably be in a lab, surrounded by all the equipment, potential and microscopes and all that. As an entry-level pharmacologist, you would be doing a lot of the basic experiments, keeping track of the data, learning from people with more experience.
So it's like an apprenticeship, basically. You're learning how to do the research. So then you move up to junior pharmacologist. What does that look like?
So as a junior pharmacologist, you'd be doing more independent work, designing experiments, analyzing data, and even writing up your findings for research papers. You might even present at conferences.
Wow, that's a pretty big change. So what would you say is the next step after that?
Well, after that would be senior pharmacologist. That's where you'd start to take on more of a leadership role.
Okay, so what does that look like on a day-to-day basis?
You'd be managing research projects, from designing the experiments to supervising the data collection to publishing the findings.
So you've moved up from actually doing the experiments yourself to overseeing the whole thing. That's a lot of responsibility.
It is, and you'd also be mentoring other researchers, helping them to develop their careers.
Yeah, that makes sense. So then RoleCatcher mentions the principal pharmacologist, which sounds like the top of the ladder.
Right, that's where you'd be setting the vision for the whole research program.
Wow, so instead of leading one team, you're leading the whole department. That's incredible. What would you say are the most important skills for that role?
I would say you need to be able to see the big picture and plan for the future. You'd be working with teams from different disciplines to solve really complex problems. You would need to be good at building relationships so you could secure funding for research projects. And you'd always have to make sure that everything is being done ethically and according to regulations.
Wow. So you need to be a really great scientist, but also a great leader.
Exactly. But that's what makes this field so exciting. There are so many different paths you can take, and you can make a real impact at every stage.
So RoleCatcher also gives a lot of resources for people who want to go into pharmacology, right?
Yeah, they have links to groups like the American Association for the Advancement of Science and the American Chemical Society. Those are great places to learn about the newest research, connect with other professionals, and find mentors.
That's amazing. It's like they're giving you everything you need to get started. They've thought of everything. It's like they're setting you up for success. But, going through all of this, it makes me wonder.
What's that?
Well, RoleCatcher focuses a lot on the technical parts of the job, the degrees and stuff, but I'm curious, for you, what's the most rewarding part of working in pharmacology? Besides, the career achievements, what makes you want to go to work every day?
Hmm, that's a good question. I would have to say it's remembering the people.
What do you mean?
Behind all the research, the experiments, the new drugs, there are people who are sick, and they're hoping that we can make them better. Even if it's just a small thing, knowing that my work might help someone is really motivating.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's about more than just science. RoleCatcher has some interesting interview questions, too. There's one that asks you to describe a time you had to make a difficult decision about a drug's safety.
Oh yeah, that's a tough one.
What makes that so difficult?
Well, we're always trying to balance how well a drug works with how safe it is. And sometimes it's hard to know what the right decision is.
So you need to understand the science, but also be ethical.
Right. You have to think about what's best for the patient.
It seems like pharmacology is more than just being smart.
Yeah, you have to be passionate about it.
Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive into pharmacology. We've talked about everything from the science behind it to what kind of career you can have.
It's a complex field, but it's also really important.
Definitely. So to wrap things up, what's one thing you would say to someone who's thinking about a career in pharmacology?
I would say it's not just about what you know. It's about using that knowledge to make a difference in the world.
That's a great point. You have the potential to really help people.
Exactly.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for listening.